I mean, obviously, like when I was growing up in the UK, being in a metal
Yeah,
band, I wasn't in a metal band. I'm not as fucking talented as you, but being in a metal band, um, it was really hard for anybody to get anywhere because like there was nothing on the
yeah.
radio, there was nothing on TV. The clubs were all dying out as well. I mean, the main one we had in Manchester was Rock World, which I know isn't there anymore, and I've been here a while. Um, but you then come out in a band like Sylosis, and your first album was 2008, so it wasn't that long after I'd left the UK. Like,
Right.
how did you like what challenges did you have, and how did you overcome them to be able to have a band that then tours the world and does whatever it is that you do?
Um, well, yeah, I mean, I definitely echo your sentiments of it being harder for UK bands. I think before Sylosis started doing well in like let's say the late 90s, early 2000, well, early 2000s, being someone who was a huge metal fan and was buying Kerrang and Metal Hammer,
Yeah, that's right.
you just kind of got the feeling that the odds were stacked up against you as a UK metal band because there were none breaking through, none doing anything. Like particularly coming out of like the new metal era, you had bands like Earth Tone Nine,
Yeah,
Stamping Ground, 1 Minute Silence. All of those were great bands, um, but none of them really went anywhere. And it just looks like no matter how good the band was or whatever, that it's not as cool to be British as it was to be an American band, especially in like the new metal days, I
yeah,
guess. Um, so yeah, it just felt like there was no one at that time, like a few years ahead of us that was doing well or that we could aspire to like, oh, well, that band's doing really well. Um, so like, I'd see these bands, like the ones I just mentioned, maybe supporting bigger bands, but it was never like their time in the spotlight or anything. And then they all ended up splitting up. So it did look kind of like an uphill battle to be a British band back then. I think that's changed now. And we came around at a time when, um, you know what, I don't know if this necessarily made a difference for a band like us or not, but maybe it did. But Bring Me the Horizon getting like worldwide
mm,
success quite early on and being a British band, regardless of the fact that they're not like in the same like metal world as Sylosis, maybe that helped uh, because they were the first band coming out of the era that I was just talking about that did anything that was British, especially like being a heavier band.
yeah,
So yeah, maybe they broke the doors down, or maybe it was just something that was going to happen anyway, and maybe it's just regardless of their success. But I think it would be unfair not to mention them because they were hugely successful, and they were like in terms of metal. I mean, also I guess Bullet for My Valentine around a similar time. That was like, but we had already been doing our thing, and but we didn't like look up to those bands necessarily musically, but like I, before then there was no one breaking through the noise from the UK. And also being on Nuclear Blast Records, like a German label, and we would, fortunately, I think for us, would get lumped in more with like the proper metal stuff
yeah, yeah. I know the ones.
of all the bands that Nuclear Blast released. Um, and especially at the time, we were kind of moving away from, even though we grew up listening to like hardcore stuff like Hatebreed or whatever else, we didn't really want to be lumped in with the metalcore stuff. So we started moving to East Standard, and we wanted to appeal to the more like proper metalheads at the time. But yeah,
Yeah.
so quite a long, lengthy answer there. I hope that was all right.
No, it's no. I like the answer because like when I left in 2000, the early 2000s, and there was a little spell there where like there was no more Donington. Donington had stopped for a couple of years, and then obviously when you came back,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
rebranded as Download. Um,
yeah,
the record labels that were big when I was growing up was Roadrunner and Earache, and Earache was a good one for British bands. But
yeah,
even Earache had kind of fallen by the wayside as well. And I just remember thinking, there's just nobody coming from Britain, and now there is. I mean, there's you
yeah.
just. I just thought it was kind of quite interesting because, as I said, your first album was during that period, and it's like, well, how did you break through? So I mean, and you're right. If you got to ride on, I'm saying it in that sort of way, but you have to ride on someone's coattails because they kick that door through. You go for it. That's how most bands make it. You know, one does it and everyone else
Yeah,
follows.
I mean, admittedly, like at the time, I don't think I was thinking about. Um, I didn't really see Bring Me as like kicking down the door for us. Same with Bullet. I think at least at the time, I was just focused on what we were doing, and it felt like, just the scene was evolving. But retrospectively, looking back, and just thinking about bands breaking through, and maybe those bands being from the UK and doing well, maybe there was less stigma around British bands
Mm.
because of those guys. And like, I also wonder, and I don't have a strong opinion because I genuinely don't know, but I wonder if there was um, an issue in the UK press where the UK press like didn't want to touch UK stuff because they didn't think it was as cool either. Or
Yeah.
maybe not touch it, but didn't champion it in the same way.
Well,
I
it
don't know.
certainly didn't. I mean, like I'm a bit older than you, but I certainly remember like growing up, we had the Radio One Rock show on a Friday night, on Friday and Saturday night, which would champion the rock music.
Right.
And then by the time we got to the mid-90s, that had disappeared. Headbangers Ball had disappeared. We used to have the one that was on it was on at like 2:30 in the morning on ITV with their Crusher used to do
Oh
it.
yeah.
Yeah, that disappeared as well, and you just couldn't find any. By the time I left, that they had the Kerrang TV, and that was it. And so I'm with you. I think a lot of it was it just wasn't cool unless you were Metallica. No one
Yeah.
gave a shit. Yeah, it was as simple as that, really, which I thought was
I
pretty.
mean, also, it's kind of hard to specifically pinpoint it because more metal stuff just was out of fashion anyway, like during the mid 90s when grunge came in.
Yeah,
And
I remember that at
so
school.
it's hard. Yeah. And like, obviously, all the more extreme stuff like the Year 8 bands like Napalm Death and Carcass. I mean, Carcass had split up mid 90s anyway. So it was sort of, it's hard to really identify what the issues were, but it was definitely a thing, wasn't it?
It
UK metal
was.
just, yeah.
Was it a nice touch though? And if we go from say, early mid 2000s to now, 20 years later to now to currently, obviously there's your band. There's the band who you're wearing on your jumper at the moment as well. Yeah,
Yep.
Malevolence, yeah. Who I know you're going to be touring with later on this year. They've been out here a couple of times and absolutely kill it.
Yep.
And there's a whole range of British bands now that are really going somewhere, whether it's metalcore or not. I mean, um, do you see the big difference, and do you feel you've been part of, like, have you championed any of that big difference, not only with Sylosis, but also potentially with Architects?
Sorry, in what way? What do you mean? Like
What
championed? Is in what, like got behind the bands as well, or?
what influenced them as well? Like, to get them to,
Oh,
yeah, kick doors down for them as well.
I mean, I don't know. I know that Sylosis is in. I'd feel wary of saying influence because I don't know if that's true or not. But I know the guys in Malevolence like Sylosis and grew up listening to them,
Yeah.
especially like their guitarist Josh, who happens to write most of their music and is the lead player.
You can hear that in their music
I
as well
think
when they go riffy. You can hear it. Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, I'd hate to say that without him sort of confirming it. But at the same time, we probably also like, similar stuff. Like Lamb of God was always an influence for Sylosis.
Yeah.
Malevolence definitely love Lamb of God. So whether or not you could say it's us or not, it's definitely for them to say, not me. But I do know those guys like the band. But I'm like super happy for the success they're having at the moment. Um, Also, Ali, our drummer, plays in another band, Believe From Within, who
Yes.
during the pandemic, they seem to like start doing well for themselves. And in terms of the bands that I think we identify with, like in a like genre wise, in terms of filling, because to me, there's a huge gap in the metal world of like not to make it sound boring when I say metal, like just straight ahead metal, but in terms of the gap that we want to fill, like if you look at bands like Machine Head and Lamb of God and Pantera, that sort of, it's more, I don't want to say middle of the road because that makes it sound boring, which it isn't, but like more straight ahead metal. There's nothing out there.
Yeah.
There's like
Everything's
no one
gimmicky. Yeah.
rising through the noise. And the only bands that I feel like that we have like a kinship with happen to be Malevolence and Bleed From Within, and we're all like friends and we're all from the UK. So like it's cool for UK metal. And I don't want to say that we're the only ones. There definitely are other bands coming through. And metal on the whole, there's a great like underground scene, but a lot of it's a bit more compartmentalized in terms of like genres. Like there's loads of amazing like death metal coming out of the US now, like a more old school resurgence of bands like Undeath and Frozen Soul and stuff. But that's different to what we do. But in terms of like what we do, it's kind of more those two bands I just mentioned that we feel like a more of a musical kinship with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, now let's talk about your album. Okay, now that we've spoken about the
Yeah.
UK, on that
Yeah.
it is album number 6, um,
Yeah.
over 15 years. In terms of the length of the album, it's the shortest album you've done, but it's arguably the most dynamic and impactful one you've done as well. Like there's kind of just there's no filler really, just really goes for it. Not to say there was on the others, but was that a
Sure.
conscious effort to make it such a almost like your Rain in Blood, just like bang, here you go?
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's not my favorite Metallica record, but we were thinking more in terms of yeah, like a Rain of Blood, but also the Black Album, and not more. My manager like was really ruthless with me or like with the band before doing this record. He was like, "You guys have always been great. You've always put in a lot of attention to detail and stuff, and it's not like we've ever half-assed anything. It was like you're not reaching your potential. Like you're not. It's not landing and connecting with audiences in the same way that you might want it to, and um, you're just not like it doesn't feel like there's as many like moments. And it took me a little while to get what he meant, but he just meant like the bits in the songs that everyone can't wait to happen and like iconic stuff.
Mm.
And yeah, I think to me, like we really wanted to focus on having a lot more like anthemic vibes, but in a way that was still super heavy. Like so for me, like big influences growing up was like Pantera, especially like Great Southern Trendkill, where like the
Mm.
first track, it's super heavy, but the chorus still feels like you want to sing along with it. It
Yeah,
still feels like catchy, even though it's brutal. So anthemic by no means means let's do radio songs.
yeah.
Or like with the
It's not
comparison
Def
I made to
Leppard.
like the Black Album. Exactly, yeah. But we definitely wanted some more of that like stompy Black Album, like big stadium riff kind of vibes. And or even bands like Slipknot, like Iowa was a big record for me as a kid. Songs like People Equal Shit just were like
Mm.
super heavy, but still like anthemic and like a big part of their set. Even if they weren't like a single that you'd hear on the radio, it's still and that was something that we didn't really have in the past. Even though we had songs with like choruses and whatever else, it didn't really land in the same way. And like, um, so there was more focus on that and way more focus on my vocals and like, you know, because in the past, as a guitarist, I'm like, oh well, if the riffs are sick, just scream over it and it'll be fine. But this time around, it's like no, like people need to like get behind me as a front man, and they need to like really feel like what I'm saying and be able to connect and resonate with it. So yeah, that was a big part of it as well.
Yeah, cool. So, apart from obviously trying to go for the anthemic part, what were the differences on this album than previous albums? Like as an example, I do know there's a producer this time, Scott Atkins. So I mean, like, what
Yep.
did he bring, and what else was different?
So yeah, I mean, just getting more outside perspective was different. So our manager, he's also credited as like executive producer. I don't know why I keep doing that because it's a legitimate thing. So he was quite like, you know,
Yeah,
he'd have yeah, he'd get quite involved with like the songs or the song structures or even vocal production. Like he even came around here one day and we just go through some songs and I just he'd be like, no, you need to do that line again, like more enunciation there, or like you need to sound more pissed off there, or whatever it was. So he was a big part of it. Scott Atkins, we've actually worked with in the past. So he produced. I'm going to do them again. He produced the first two records. Admittedly, though, that it was more of like engineering. Like he might have some input, and we would listen to it. And but for the most part, the songs that we recorded were the same as the demos we had going into the studio. Whereas this time round, we were speaking to him in advance of going in the studio and was like, listen to the songs, sit with them for a while, give us all your feedback. Like, and he would, his whole thing as well, even though he's the guitarist, one of the guitarists in Stamping Ground, so
Oh, okay.
UK
I
metal
remember
band.
Stamping Ground, yeah.
Yeah, so he had been, in a band, so it's definitely not his. But his mindset, and he always says, is like, I just try and get my head inside the head of like a metal punter, or like my friends that go to shows that don't play an instrument, haven't been in a band, and what are they going to enjoy? So that's his perspective on like listening to the songs, and he'll be like, "Where's the chorus in this song?" Like, or like, "There's nothing in here. Like, I need some hooks that we want to sing along, and I want to see like the blinders or the lights on stage that like where the whole crowd sings along on those parts." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, yeah," because like all the shit that I like has anthemic stuff, even if it's really heavy, but it's stuff that I'd overlooked. I think partly because I've come from being a guitarist rather than just being a singer
Hmm.
frontman. So yeah, he was a lot more involved this time around, and admittedly, even though I was writing a lot of the architect stuff, and like it was only me writing like riffs for the band, and it was the drummer was the only other person writing music. So it wasn't like I was taking inspiration directly from architects. But what I did learn in that band mainly, amongst other things, was that just learning to collaborate and accept outside criticism and actually welcome it. Because when I first brought in demos for architects, it was a bit like uncomfortable for me because I was like, oh, I've spent ages writing these songs, and Dan's just taking the chorus, moved that there. That's now the pre-chorus, and I was just like, oh, what are you doing to my art?
My
And
baby,
after a
my
while,
baby.
like that was, yeah, exactly, yeah. But after a while, it was really beneficial for me to like learn to let go in so many ways. So, learning to collaborate more and accept outside criticism is something that I actively seek out now. I'm like, tell me it's shit. Tell me where it can be better, because ultimately, I want it to do well, and I want to hear everyone's opinion on it.
Yeah.
So, aside from having more help, I'm also a lot more open to like hearing anyone else's criticism.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I like Scott's theory because look, I'm not a musician either, and so when I go and do gig
yeah,
reviews, I'm in the same ballpark where I'm like, look, I can't sit there and say that Josh's fucking was Ingrid Malmsteen's fucking solos because I got no idea what you've done on there. But does it sound good? Yes. Does it have the crowd going? Yes. And
sure.
that's what I write. 'Cause I write as a punter as well. It's like, was I bored? Was I?
Yeah, yeah,
And because ultimately they're the people who are going to buy the records or stream it or
exactly.
so
Yeah,
it's
yeah, of course.
I try and do the same thing. So I like that Scott does that. You did actually already touch on a question I was going to ask later on, but we'll dig into it now. I mean, you've mentioned about um, what you brought from architects, which was the ability to collaborate and take stuff on. Actually, I've got to ask you about that. I mean, how does that make you feel? When someone's just basically torn apart your art and gone, or not torn it apart, but basically turned it upside down and inside out and make something else. I mean, it must be quite challenging.
Yeah, definitely more so in the start of me being an architect, in the early days of working with them, because it's just not something that I had done before. So it was definitely jarring, and I'd come from a background of doing art as well, like actually painting and drawing, and having quite a clear um like image in my head, either visually or of like I want a song to be, and I know what the type of song it is, and that's how it's going to be. So it was really jarring, but I came into architects uh, at a time where like they'd been a band for 15 years before me, so I can't just come in and be like, right, this is how we're doing things. But admittedly, it was an odd position to be in, because I was like the only one like writing riffs, because it was like the new guy, but the new guy doing a lot of the writing. So it's quite an odd position to be in.
Well, that is, and I'm going to come back to your album in a minute, but I'm going to continue on this vein because I do have another question. Um, I'm in Adelaide. Okay, so in Australia, I'm
Yeah,
in Adelaide. And when you were here with Architects, not that long ago, what, oh,
yeah.
you know where this is going. So we all saw it. We all saw what happened. And I saw the guy get dragged out by like 8 security guards as well. He wasn't even touching the floor while he got dragged off. And the concept that I recall from that night was that the guy was having a go at you because of all the new music. At the same time, you're also just up on stage, just enjoying yourself and it's dark. Like, what was going through your head? What was happening at the time? Well, it was mental in the crowd.
Uh,
Like that.
yeah. To be honest, it was a bit of a blur, and it was also very dark before the song. Basically, I don't know if he was specifically having a go at me because I heard him loud and clear because he was speaking down my microphone,
Okay.
and in our in monitors, all I have is myself. So he was just really drunk. He got on stage and he was just like, "Who wants to hear some old shit?" And that was
Okay.
it. Like in terms of what he said. So like he might have, yeah, obviously been wanting to hear some old stuff. Uh, if he had just given us a few more moments, he would have heard a really old song that had literally just started the intro to come on for an older one. But yeah, that was it. It was just a bit of a blur, bit of a.
It's
But
scary shit.
I was fine.
Okay.
I just sort of just assumed he was just like a drunk guy, just and
Oh,
it was yeah all over pretty quickly. But it was all right for me. Yeah, nothing
no.
too stressful.
Well, on behalf of Adelaide in South Australia, that's not what we do. Okay. That's what he does.
Oh no, I know. Yeah,
All right, going back to the
yeah.
album. So thanks for diverting there. Going back to the album, you had
That was.
the title track is it's said that it's written about anxiety in the world and where it's all going. Um, was there a theme of that then appears throughout the album?
Yeah, there are elements of that. Yeah, it was obviously given the timeline of it, or a lot of the record was written during or coming out of the pandemic when I mean all sorts was going on then
Mm,
from like every angle politically, like so many different things were cropping up. Um, Protests, riots, climate change stuff, all of it. Um, and being able to like take a step back and try and make sense of it all is one thing, but the main thing was just the more than ever the feeling of just like separation between people. Like everyone just like you're not you'd be like on eggshells like in terms of who you're saying what to in terms of your like
mm,
political stances or whatever it may be. Um, Not personally, but that just like just as an overall like feeling in the world, like everyone like you just see like on Twitter like just people going at each other for and ultimately they probably have way more in common than what they might be arguing about. But so yeah, it's quite a vague um explanation there. But yeah, I mean it's just like a quite a it's hard to not just write about what was going on in various degrees throughout the pandemic in
mm.
that regard. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to hear. So what's happening post release? I mean, obviously, I know you've got the European tour with Malevolence and one of our boys, Justice for the Damned. They'll be over there as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Yes.
who I'm a huge fan of as well.
Yeah.
What's happening after the European tour and specifically Australia? Because I have to ask.
Well,
I've got more money
I
on
can't
Knotfest,
divulge
by the
it.
way.
I mean, we'll, I don't know about that one, but we are with 5B management, who is Slipknot's management. So getting on Not Fest is something that, if our current plans don't go ahead, could be on the cards. I don't know. I probably shouldn't say anything like that because I'll probably get told off. But we do have a tour on the cards for January or January, February, March, like just in the start of next year, the first half. Sorry, not January, but
Yeah,
so if we can make it happen, yeah, we should be over there. It should be the second tour of the album campaign. So
awesome.
given that we've not been there for a while, you're going to get a very good head start on the rest of the world in terms of Sylosis touring. Fingers crossed if it all goes to plan. I can't say what it is or if it's confirmed yet, but
Touch
it's
wood.
definitely, no matter what, we will be aiming to get to Australia in 2024. Definitely.
Awesome. Because I reckon the last time
And it
I
actually
saw,
showed,
here you go.
gone. I was just going to say, Australia is surprisingly, because we haven't been there in so long, was showing up as one of the best analytics in terms of like Spotify plays and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So even though we've not been there in a while, it looks like it's a good place for us to be.
Well, the two, when I could be wrong. I remember seeing you guys at Soundwave, and that was 20,
Yep,
fuck,
13.
12, 13. There you go. Yeah. Was that the last
Yeah,
time?
it was. Yeah, 10 years. Yeah, that was a good Soundwave though. Metallica and Slayer.
Yeah, it's a fair point. Yeah, yeah, it was a good day actually. Yeah.
Yeah,
The so that then comes the second thing I do know about this neck of the woods is that, as you just seem like having Justice for the Damned on the tour there with you, we've got other bands like Alpha Wolf who are really going places as well. We are actually beginning to have a really vibrant metal scene down here. When you say metal,
oh, 100%.
we're
Yeah,
actually having it, and they really get out for it. I mean, Die Out is Murder as well. They're a huge draw card
they're killing
everywhere.
it.
You
Yeah,
know, they played with
yeah,
Malevolence,
yeah.
I think, last year as well. So
Yeah, no, Die Art is Murder, like they're another band that, even though they're like more towards the death metal side of things, that we definitely feel like a bit of a kinship with in terms of, being like a metal band. And yeah, hopefully we can do some touring with them as well because we really like that band.
yeah, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think we've only got half an hour and I've pretty much pushed it all out. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Um, just that, yeah, thanks to any Australian fans that have been wanting to see us and for being so patient with us all this time. But we will be back over there, I promise.
Awesome. That's not back. Like you actually will be back.
Yeah, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. We definitely plan on it.
All right, awesome.
Cool.
Well, look, thank you very much, Josh. Really appreciate your
No
time,
worries.
and hopefully we'll see you early next year.
Yes, yeah, love to.
Thanks,
Cool. All right.
man.
Cheers, Ian. Take
Cheers,
care.
Josh.
See
Bye.
ya.